Good morning, everybody.
Me llamo Alfonso Muñoz.
My name is Alfonso Muñoz.
Llevo trabajando
I have been working in cybersecurity for the last 10 years. I'm a senior security researcher and co-editor, Crifted. If you can spy on me, you can see all the things I'm currently doing. In the present, I'm working with Jorge Ramiro in Crifted network, and by generating a lot of material, you can say my personal Twitter, my own email account. You can send me whenever you want. The idea of coming here to the rooted edition, I was in the very first rooted edition, and I tried to get my very first pinch of salt to everything. And I decided to come back to this 5th edition for us to reach our 10th edition objectives. This talk, I hope it won't leave you ignorant. This is a very particular topic, and it's us we can hide communications in natural language with stenography in a very particular world. The question you can see on screen, these questions have been posed by myself over the last years, and I tried to answer them by creating a concrete tool that I will show you during this presentation.
Right, this presentation is a bit dense. Right, if you have any questions after it, please feel ahead to go for them. All right, so you are all aware of the type of world we are living in. Everything is monitored, and well, within this setting, well, do not focus on the image on the left. What I mean is that within this setting, there are very many mechanisms trying to minimize attacks or leaks of information. And then, within that, we have two classic mechanisms. We have a cryptography and steganography. We are not going to go deeper into these two sciences, but rather, in terms of cryptography, we could say that there are two main problems. Well, primarily that people do not use it. And the second one is that people who use cryptography is highly visible. If someone monitors your communication, people can see that you're using cryptography, protocol that you're using, and from there onwards, they may try to attack your algorithm or just to try to attack your machine, okay, get hold of your keys, etc. So, added to that, we have the steganography. The reason or the aim of it is to try to hide the existence of communication. In that sense, they go well together. So on the one hand, I encrypt information, on the other hand, I hide it. So throughout history, we have had many examples in terms of liberties, defense, and advocacy, corporate leaks of information. On the left, you can see a photograph from a recent event. It was about Russian spying, where they used, this information on public service to exchange information with agents. So here in the European Union, lots of money is being invested in detecting steganography. It is an unresolved issue, and many people are trying to find out the way to detect as many communications as possible. So both cryptography and steganography, I started to research on them more seriously, more deeply, since 2003 when I got to know Echelon and its variants. So therefore, I got interested in these topics. I wanted to get detailed information on them, and I found out that there were a number of limitations associated with them. Somehow, all these technologies are highly elitist. You really need to know about all the attacks out there to protect yourself in terms of encryption. You really need to have mathematical foundation. At the end of the day, you are generating tools that people use, and we don't know whether the tools are secure or not. And let us say that all the responsibility is put in the hands of the users. And we assume that users have good training, and this is not necessarily so. And then, in the meantime, I decided to read papers, articles, etc. Since 2002, at least from a public viewpoint, we've seen that there is lots of information about the use of natural processing languages and the use of patterns to generate intelligence. So osming techniques have been used massively recently to generate intelligence, that is to say, to monitor communication. So this is the conclusion that we can reach. However, when I thought what I knew about steganography and encryption, and remembering that natural processing language is increasingly being used to monitor all kinds of data for the last 2 years, I thought about using those ideas rather than to detect information, but communications, but to protect communications. I did some research and I went into linguistic steganography. So that is to say, natural language communication. And why natural language? Well, actually, I was interested in choosing a wide, a broad means, that is to say, basically text, and then text that could be changed its means or means of communication. For instance, I don't know, I could include a text, I don't know, on paper, through SMS. So that is to say, I was looking for some good degree of flexibility. So I started to do my research, and then we had like very basic steganography, one word here, one other word over there. So very basic, but however, fortunately, in the past few years, we have had good researchers and good people working on linguistic steganography. That is to say, using all the linguistic knowledge, adding computational knowledge, and then to come out with a number of algorithms. I started to study the state of art, and then I said to myself, well, if we can find out an algorithm that works out well, I really would like to know whether I can end up answering the 2 questions that appear on the slide. So the idea is, in order to remove the elitist nature of these 2 systems, I would like someone just to, with the capacity to read or to write, to know whether communication is secure or not. Well, of course, we are taking away work for mathematicians, etc. But, well, these are ideas that have been in my mind for all this time. I've been trying to mature them, and I've just studied the pros and cons. So this is like very lengthy. I will go fast through it. Basically, we are talking about hiding. In natural languages, we have 2 fundamental lines, one of them being automatic generation. That is to say, I generate an algorithm that will produce the meaningful text. That is to say that a person can read a text which is free of faults. And then, well, you may try that out if you want it. This tool, I introduced it, I wrote it 2 years ago, and the other one, you may download it, you can play around with it and see the texts that you come out with. And that tool somehow proved that actually a person can change a text manually and then could give meaning to a text, contrary to what a machine could do. As I said, this is a tool that I produced a few years ago. Right, the other line is modification of existing texts. And here you can think about anything. I'm going to measure whether an adjective comes with a verb or an adverb, etc. I studied all that, or many of those things, but I reached the conclusion that you really needed thousands of words to hide just a few number of bits. So I decided to put it aside. Perhaps I will go back to it in the future. I just don't know. However, today, in my talk, I'm going to focus on the psychosemantic modification. That is to say, we will be taking words and we will change them, we will modify them. So this is a complex system, so with the ultimate goal that at the end of the day, a user, by writing or by reading, will have the opportunity to know whether that communication is secure or not. Well, you know, when you start to do research, you find out that there is always someone smarter than you. Then you take take advantage of that, you draw on that, and then you use it to your advantage. Well, this thing of using words to replace other words, I did not make it up myself, you know, that was invented in 1997. However, there are two pending problems. One of them is polysemy. So imagine you have, I don't know, a word, bank. You want to replace it with another word, but you really want to find out about the meaning within that actual context. Well, for instance, a bank could be, I don't know, a place where you deposit your money, could be a bank of fish, could be a bench where you sit on. So this is a polysemic word in Spanish, okay? And well, and then one of the major problems, we'll look at that later on, is resource generation. What does that mean? So for instance, if we use a synonym, a dictionary of synonyms to replace those words, well, sometimes those dictionaries do not exist, and sometimes when they exist in closed circles, and you have to pay for them. And sometimes, you know, if you access, you have to sign a paper, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. Okay. So to conclude, all these ideas, and especially this talk, is about producing a tool that hides information in natural processing, natural language, by using words synonyms. And for that, I just produced a tool. What did I do? Well, I wanted to achieve two main objectives, one being maximizing capacity of hiding, and then to reduce impacts. So I want to hide as many bits as possible, and if I replace a word, I really wanted to not to be that visible, okay? I wanted to look like human, so to speak. So in 2009, I tested this tool. I forgot about it. I have gone back to it. So let us say that I enlarged it, and I said to myself, well, if I want to maximize the hiding capacity, I really need to have a big dictionary of words. So by the time I would detect a word, I really want to have many choices. So for instance, if I have two options, I hiding bit 0. If I choose another one, I am hiding another bit 1. Because I didn't have that synonym, I decided to use the OpenOffice synonym dictionaries, and I started to look up for words on the internet so that I could increase my dictionary. So we have this amount of synonyms, 3,198. When I went back to it, I could see that it was a bit like kind of handmade, so to speak, so I decided to be more rigorous in what I did. So I went to the Spanish, the official Spanish dictionary of the Spanish language, and actually they had 714,000 words. For each word, I found a synonym. Of course, I'm not going to go into all the details, but I found all types of scripts for all the different formats, etc. After that, well, which is time-consuming, I produced the word of 31,000 word dictionary. Well, after I created the dictionary, I had to make a decision. So for instance, if I find synonyms for bank, the example I gave you before, well, in the dictionary should have only one rule, one coding and decoding rule to retrieve information. So I would either eliminate meanings or bring them all together. In some cases, replacing the meaning would be better. In other cases, I could hide it. And the option that I went for is the option of maximum capacity of hiding. So I collated or brought together all the meanings in one word, so that we could later on choose whether that word that I choose is well chosen or not. After I have a synonym of a dictionary of synonyms. So let us say you may have words in singular masculine, verbs can be in infinitive form. So I wanted to identify a maximum number of words in order to hide information. So I implemented a number of rules in order to do so. Then I studied all the most likely categories here in Spanish. So nouns, verbs, adjectives, verbs, and then I started to produce all kinds of rules. So, for instance, here we have for numbers of adjectives, rules of number and gender. For instance, feminine plural, if in the dictionary that appears in masculine, I change that into feminine plural, then I take out the synonyms and then I change those synonyms into feminine plural. And to do so, I used some rules of the Spanish of the Academy of the Official Academy of the Spanish language. All right, so that helped me resolve nouns and adjectives, and now let us move on to verbs. Well, then I could see the number of verbs in the Spanish language. Then through a small script, I downloaded all the verbs, the Spanish language. They account for more or less 10,000 of them, both irregular and regular. So the tool detects a verbal form, transforms it into infinitive, goes into the dictionary of synonyms, and then converts it, and then, well, for instance, love and appreciate. Okay, so no matter whether it is regular or irregular, after doing all these satanic or evil things, so I wanted to measure. Well, this is helpful, provided that you can hide it generically. So, for that, I took some reference texts, well, Lexep, as they are known in computational linguistics, okay, because I wanted those texts to have linguistic value. I broke them down into different pieces of information, and I calculated the maximum capacity of hiding. So after doing that, we are talking about 44% of the words. Well, it seems that we are reaching a top amount, well, because most likely words in Spanish are prepositions, articles, and determinants. Therefore, it seems reasonable to have reached our peak number of words. Well, if we only had 2 synonyms per word, we could hide only 1 bit of information. So here you can see there that we could hide 177 bits, and then later on I will show you the cool things that we could do with that information. Therefore, I had my tool already, and I knew how I could maximize the hiding capacity, and then I had to analyze the most difficult part, that is to say, to measure the impact that a word has within a text. Nowadays, there is no magic solution for that. So let us say that it's kind of a holistic thing. You have to do some trial and testing and see what comes out of it. In that sense, I decided to study the most likely structures in Spanish. Well, you can see them on the screen. For instance, noun, preposition noun, noun, adjective noun, a number of structures. And then, also in other linguistic studies, I could see that the semantic value of a word within the text is related to the nearby words. So when you read a word, actually, you know, the 3 or 4 words around it, the context is what actually gives you the highest amount of information. Therefore, I decided to define the number of words, or the words that I wanted to use to see whether a word fits or not within a text. So you can see there are 3 structures. And then I said, well, no matter where I am, well, most of the times I have like 2 words before or 2 words after, you know, 2 words left, 2 words on the right, and that will help me cover all these structures. So I've chosen a window of 4 words. Well, that window is important. Well, if you make it really large, okay, the capacity will be greater. However, the hiding capacity will be minimized or reduced. Therefore, taking that into account, I took the word that I wanted to apply the synonym on, as well as the window, to study how good that it was. Solution to do that, well, it's only statistics, statistical tables that tell you how likely is that word to appear in the text. As I told you before, some linguistic resources allows you to do so, and they are either not accessible or you have to sign a license for that, and I was not willing to do so. So therefore, I produced my own statistical tables, many of them. I tried to identify the largest number of texts in the Spanish language written by humans, and I moved on to Wikipedia. After doing all the filtering, I came out with a text of 120 million words. And then from there, you get really interesting information. That helped me generate a table of 120 megabytes. So that would tell me whether a word fitted in a context or not. And then moving or starting from Google corpus, so in Spanish takes up 450 pairs of words, triplets of words, etc. That would also help you generate the statistics. For you to have a feel of the volume in Google in terms of pairs of words, well, we produce like 130 megabytes. So these are big tables. So for that tool, I decided to use Wikipedia because at the end of the day, you really want that tool to be efficient. Well, you don't really want to use like a huge table because you cannot really download it or use it, put it in your RAM memory. Anyway, after all this, going back to where I was, I want that tool to be efficient for me to tell me whether the word fits or not, and then it does an estimation. It tells me about the word that I want to replace, what is its likeliness, considering all the words, the other words in the window. So it does an estimation. This is simple estimation. And from then I decide the words that I want to choose. After doing that, real capacity is 122 bits. And as I say, of course, taking into account the hiding capacity. So this is a summary. This is a screenshot of the tool. Well, loading up the table takes a couple of minutes. I don't really want you to wait for that. So basically, the tool tells you the most frequently used words, verbs, adjectives. It tells you the words that you cannot really use, the words that have not been detected. So it helps us improve or perfect the tool. But in general, well, more or less, so let us say 85%. 85% of the information likely to be hidden. So this tool tells us whether it is helpful or not to use this type of techniques. So, because examples can be really large, okay, I would like to show this simple example with you, and then I also included an error from the first versions, early versions. So these would generate synonyms for you, and then the tool will decide, based on whether you want to hide or not, which one is worst and which one is worst and best. I left a mistake on purpose, and because the tool doesn't know whether it has to replace a proper name. For instance, I don't know, Salvador City. It says that savior is equivalent to chief, leader, champion, representative. Well, we know that this is a mistake, this is wrong, and automatic algorithms would eventually detect that error or mistake. Well, this is one of the most important slides of my presentation. What is best or coolest of this tool? Well, the name is Jaina. I did not mention that, which is the two-faced Roman god. Well, this is all automatic. The user has the option, the choice to change the text. So when you read it, you have a margin to modify the words to make the text more meaningful. And the good thing about those words is that those words are not to be necessarily known by the recipient, by the user, to recognize them. So on that slide, you can see that in many cases, the word that is in the text will stay, will not be replaced, and only in few cases there will be changes. However, the tool would let me choose between a number of synonyms to do my replacement. So all this is very nice and sounds really nice. I produce my tool, But then I ask myself, well, how can I measure the security of all this? Well, taking into account this tool, the only possible attack is that my attacker has a better table than me. So instead of taking a window of 4 words, the attacker should use a window of 8 words. So there aren't very many attacks here, because this is not a well-known topic. So the only attacks I've heard of have been made by Chinese. It seems that the Chinese are really bored and they do these kind of things. So at the end of the day, the idea is the same thing, trying to detect whether a word fits within a context or not. And then they also have a good idea, that is to say, use the best statistical table ever. And which one is that? Well, that is the internet. They use a search engine on the internet as a statistical table. So if this is what they do. For instance, if I have to find a pattern, I launch it to Google, and then the number of results of websites that I find, that tells me how human that is. So for instance, if many humans have written those websites, okay, I get those results. Tells me how much human they are or not. By doing that, by having an algorithm for language implementation tools, not analyzing impact, well, that tool helped them detect or recognize more than 90% of sites. So I wanted to test that in my tool. So I wanted my tool to detect messages and then to give it to me so that I could edit it. So for the 2009, for the test concept, I used Google. So I did request the catch-up. Well, when you try to attack the catch-up, and then at the time I realized that mysteriously enough, only by using to the URL field, so I could get an identifier for all the pages. And for some reason, Google did not show up any catch-up. I did lots of requests. They never noticed that. But what happens now? When I was really confident that this was working, I improved the tool. But when I wanted to test it, no, it didn't work. HTTPS, so the catch-up was jumped off or over, or was skipped, and I said, well, this is not the right way to follow. So I tried Bing and Yahoo, and for some reason, no, well, they just eat it, so no catch-up or anything. So I did lots of requests for these consultations to see whether there was a fit or not. So 11 million requests. So downloading one of these pages, only that takes a long time, as you know. Right from there, I decided to measure if information could be detected. So, same as the Chinese did, I used the SVM's algorithms to do some training and to test it. This is the results that I got in 2009. This is the test concept that I did and that I abandoned using the simplest dictionary of synonyms and not very mature rules. I could see that 50% of the text were not detected. When I wanted to send a text, I did sent the attack, and then at the time I could see that it detected 50%. As this is what I told you before about proper names, and as I could see that if you know how to read and how to write, you know, if you could perfect the thing or eliminate proper names, the tool could work better. And just by removing that, look, the the result? Well, 18% more of texts were not detected. This is the result that I got, and as I say, I forgot it, I put it aside, and then with the new edition I used Bing. I did the attack again, because the rules were better, sometimes the same words stayed, and I thought that the detection rate was going to be lower, which was great for the rooted. Well, because some text was going to be detected, and I said, well, for instance, I would find out, well, here it says love whenever I want to say appreciate. Okay, we change it, and that's it. But unfortunately for the rooted and for me, well, no text is detected. That 66% there is misleading. It does it randomly because it doesn't know what to choose. And then, well, you may get 66% detection, 55% detection. This is what you get. You get an overlapping. You cannot really apply or use an algorithm that really clarifies or tells you which is visible, which one is hidden. Okay, so conclusion, Spain 0, China 1. Okay. I'm finishing. I also studied the viability of using this in a robust way to detect as much information as possible. Current attacks do not detect any text. And, well, hopefully, well, by the time I will release the tool, well, you can tell me whether you can detect it or not. And then, just by knowing how to read and write, when you have the tool, you can really make your communication more secure. And then if you make a quick calculation, well, of course, you know, because this is limited in terms of size, by short messages, for instance, a post or, I don't know, text with between 100 and 600 texts, well, you can send out cool things like URLs, IP addresses, GPS coordinates. So that is to say, like cool things, okay? So, well, there are a number of things that I will soon publish in that URL that appears on the screen. So if I move forward, follow me. If I stop, push me. And if I go back, kill me. Thank you for your attention.
Muchas gracias, Alfonso. ¿Alguna preguntita rápida, muy rápida? ¿No?
Are there any questions? Quick question? Highly interesting presentation, Alfonso. What about spelling mistakes? Spelling mistakes, are they detected through your algorithm? Can you hear me now? Well, these are classic mechanisms. So they are okay for some forum, for instance, I don't know, for cars. Well, that has been studied. Well, yes, there are algorithms for that the tool is intended to be more serious, so to speak. Yes, well, of course, there are algorithms out there, you know, for people, you know, for car sales, you know, and they download like a database with the most likely or most frequently mistakes or spelling mistakes. All right, thank you so much. Big applause for him.